When you think of dragons in the Land of Shadow, your mind immediately goes to Baal the Dread. It's understandable. His questline was easily one of the most memorable in Elden Ring, answering questions about the ancient dragons and giving us some of the best acting we experienced in the game. However, Baal is not the only dragon we face, and the others found in the Land of Shadow seem to tell stories of their own, even if they aren't as grandiose. As we make our way across this darkened land, which finds all manner of death find its way to its shores, we encounter ghost flame dragons, as well as drakes, that utilize both flame and lightning, and even an ancient dragon guarding the way to Baal the Dread. So today, we're going to take a closer look at these dragons and tell their tales, because even if the story is short enough to be told at bedtime, it's still worth telling. Speaking of bedtime, we've been told by a significant number of viewers that they use our videos to fall asleep, especially our long-form content. And we recently partnered with a sponsor who can help make that sleep even more restful, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep offers a wide variety of comfortable, premium-feeling masks that will help you get a better night's sleep. From sound masks that have razor-thin Bluetooth headphones built in, to my personal favorite, their weighted sleep mask, which provides a calming pressure around your face. You can choose from a variety of options to help you get the sleep you need. Every one of their masks creates a comfortable 100% blackout while wearing them, so your sleep won't be disturbed by things like light pollution or your partner coming in after you've already gone to sleep. Whether you want to be a part of the pro-nap movement, or just need a better night's sleep to feel energized for another day, Manta Sleep is here to help. So visit their website using the link in the description, and use our promo code STG10 for 10% off your purchase when you order. Thanks again to Manta Sleep for sponsoring the channel. And with that said, let's get back to these terrifying beasts. After playing through the base game of Elden Ring, I'm sure we all became accustomed to wandering into dragon fights. The drakes we could face across the land were many, and we all expected to find our fair share once we entered the Land of Shadow. However, when exploring the overworld, you won't come across your run-of-the-mill drakes. In the Gravesite Plain, the Cerulean Coast, and Morth Highway, we can do battle with ghost flame dragons. These drakes now have little flesh to speak of. They were clearly wrapped in burial shrouds upon their death, as we can see their eyes are still covered with these black linens. The incantation Ghost Flame Breath tells us a little about these creatures. One of the incantations of Dragon Communion transforms caster into a dragon to spew ghost flame breath from above. The land of spirit graves is home to all manner of dead, and even the corpses of fallen dragons found their way there. Several of them were endowed with such vivacity that even in death, they could not fully die. It seems this may be the result of trying to burn particularly powerful dragons in ghost flame. We know that the rituals of the Deathbirds used to rule in this land, just as they once did in the lands between. And we also know that dragons who fight on behalf of Baal followed him to the Land of Shadow to rest upon the jagged peak. I believe these ghost flame dragons are born of the remains of those who fought for Baal and were defeated by the Drake Knights. The incantation description could be seen as contradictory to this idea, saying that the corpses of fallen dragons found their way to the Land of Shadow. But I believe this turn of phrase doesn't invalidate the idea that the dragons were killed in the Land of Shadow. We know that Drake Knights resided in this land, as we can come across Egon and the ancient dragon man who was once a Drake Knight. Along with this, we know drakes resided at the jagged peak, as we can see numerous corpses on the path to Baal. This means there's a distinct possibility the ghost flame dragons we find in the Land of Shadow were killed while searching for food away from the peak, and burned in ghost flame, as would have been the ritual at the time. Given that we know the Drake Knights were established after the battle between Placidusax and Baal, the timeline does work here, as they could have been killed before Marika's ascension. So it is that these ghost flame dragons survive in the Land of Shadow amongst the graves, until we find them and cut them down for their hearts and ancient dragon stones. It would seem we aren't the only ones interested in killing these dragons, as one of them could be found being attacked by a group of Messmer's soldiers of the Golden Order, who would see its ghost flame breath and dedicate themselves to killing this blasphemous representation of death that stood in stark contrast to the Golden Order. Unfortunately for them, it's likely the sheer strength of this drake would wipe them out entirely unless we enter the fray. With this said, this isn't the only instance of a dragon already being locked in battle when we find them in the Land of Shadow. When we first find our way out of the dragon's pit, we are confronted by the Jagged Peak Drake. A straightforward battle against your typical drake, surrounded by the corpses of many of his brethren. Whether or not you engage in this battle is completely up to you, and it doesn't have any kind of larger lore implication. We know Baal is at the top of the peak, and the drakes trace their lineage back to him, so it makes sense there would be one protecting the road to its progenitor. What's really interesting is that as we make our way up, we encounter two more drakes fighting against each other. The obvious question here is why? If you pay attention to their clash before diving into the fray, you'll see that only one is called a Jagged Peak Drake, and it's the one breathing fire. The other drake actually has the ability to call down red lightning, a skill typically unique to the ancient dragons. With nothing more than visual cues, Shadow of the Erdtree has presented us with a fascinating story. The Jagged Peak Drake, who is defending Baal at the top of the mountain, is locked in battle with a drake that has actually defected to the ancient dragons. The drakes were shunned by the ancient dragons after Baal's attack against Placidusax, and were so deeply reviled that the ancient dragons created Dragon Communion, so others would hunt drakes for their hearts. However, right here we can see at least one drake that was accepted by the ancient dragons, a traitor to his own kind, much like another dragon in FromSoft lore who betrayed his own. I only wish this dragon was given a name, or some kind of written lore, because I would have loved to learn more about him. After this battle, we again continue up the peak and meet another enemy standing between us and our prize, the ancient dragon, Senisax. Senisax is a bit of a mystery, because you would assume that an ancient dragon would be on their way to kill Baal themselves. Perhaps all of the drake corpses littering the peak are due to Senisax's lightning. This may be your knee-jerk reaction when first encountering this ancient dragon. However, there's a craftable item we can create in Shadow of the Erdtree that tells a different story. The red lightning pot tells us it's a craftable item prepared using a ritual pot. A cocktail of red fulminating materials is sealed inside. Throw at an enemy to inflict lightning damage that links to surrounding enemies. The ancient dragons, who betrayed their lord to side with a tyrant, were known for wielding branching red lightning. There were ancient dragons that actually sided with Baal, likely due to their frustration that their lord refused to act on anything until his god returned to him. In case we needed any more proof that Senisax was among these defectors, he attacks us with branching red lightning. So this means that the dead drakes all around weren't killed by this ancient dragon. They likely fell to another's hand, while Senisax continued to prevent any who would approach the peak from reaching his new master, Baal, the dread drake, who was able to wound their previous lord. Again, I wish we could have learned more about Senisax, as named ancient dragons tend to have some level of importance or gravity in the history of the lands between. And unfortunately, all we can learn about this one is their allegiance. These new drakes and dragons in Shadow of the Erdtree have been called out by many as simply reused assets. I can understand that argument, as we've already fought so many of them in the base game of Elden Ring. But I'd argue, when they're given this level of care and attention to why they exist in this land, I don't think we should be against their inclusion. This investigation into the lore of these enemies revealed to me that these were not simply asset flips, giving us more large-scale enemies to face across the map, but they were instead thoughtful inclusions, meant to be a part of the world building of the Land of Shadow. The Ghost Flame dragons roam the land, essentially fossils, remnants of the old order that was wiped out in the lands between, but still has some level of control here where the Golden Order is spread thin. The Drakes of the Jagged Peak defend their master, who's directly tied to the lore of Elden Lord Placidusax. An ancient dragon stands tall, choosing its own path against its lord by siding with Baal. Each of these stories is wildly interesting, but easily missed. You just have to be willing to look a little more closely, and suddenly, what seems like nothing more than reused assets becomes a richer, more vibrant story. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of the dragons found in the Land of Shadow. Did you defeat all 3 Ghost Flame dragons? Did you notice that the dragons fighting each other on the Jagged Peak had different movesets? Did you realize Senesax fought for Baal? Or did you think he could be responsible for the many dead drakes along the road? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden Lore.